Next up, we have a native Montanan who relocated to Bozeman in 1981. Robin Erlenbush began a real estate career in 1980. She became the owner of ERA Landmark Real Estate in 1990, overseeing branches in Bozeman, Big Sky, Livingston, and Ennis. She's a strong advocate for the arts and enjoys tending her garden in her free time. Robin, thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you. Would you have anticipated the real estate boom that has spurred as a result of the pandemic?
I don't think I anticipated the size of it. As you and I talked earlier today, one of the things that I've lived through in my real estate career have been these what I call flights away from density, flights to security, flights when you can live wherever you want to live and you can work remotely. So we saw it after 9/11. We saw it after the stock market crash, where people made conscious decisions about what was important in their life, what was important in their legacy properties, where they wanted to spend time with their kids and grandkids. So as I look back at the last 120, 150 days, it isn't really surprising, with a little bit of room from where we started in March. But in March, I didn't think it would be quite this overwhelming. We were all just paddling, making sure we were staying afloat.
So how surprising has it been for you then to see the boom and just absolute flourish of the real estate market at this point?
Well, one of the things that is really driving this market is, as Anya said earlier, there was this huge return to the metropolitan areas where you could go to the symphony, go to the opera, go to museums, go to sporting events. When that opportunity got taken away, and some predictions are that those events may not come back for several years. So people are reassessing how they want to spend, if you will, their time when they're not working. And it makes a lot of sense to look at smaller communities, communities that are perceived to have more outdoor recreation, communities that are perceived to potentially be safer, have small town values. And I think we're benefiting tremendously from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned outdoor recreation. What are some of the themes that you are hearing people discuss when they explain their reason for relocating to Southwest Montana?
One of the things that we have seen, and interestingly enough, when you look at our markets, they're really quite small. So we're seeing a large uptick. When you put it in perspective of what's happening in the rest of the nation, many of the metropolitan areas are still thriving. We are a small percentage of people that are migrating. But I think the reality of it is that we potentially could see this as a sustainable trend for a few more years.
Yeah, well, you just mentioned the national market. So as you analyze trends, what are you seeing in that on a national level versus here in Southwest Montana?
Well, a couple of things that I've been involved in recently. I've done some national webinars specifically on real estate economics. And one of the things that we saw in real estate was a V recovery. Real estate came back substantially quicker than, like, for example, the hospitality market, the travel market, the entertainment market. Those areas are all still quite stifled in comparison to real estate. So there's been a surprising recovery. As the other speakers said earlier, we kind of went on pause for the first couple weeks of March. But one of the things I did after we talked today is I tried to quantify what has really happened in the marketplace. And I'll just speak to the greater Bozeman marketplace for right now, which is Bozeman, Belgrade, Manhattan, rural Bozeman. I went and tried to look at where the opportunity was and where the buyers were really focusing on our market. From basically, I did April 1 through the end of July. So a 4-month period, $1 million homes and above, we saw a 56% increase in sales. Many of those are from out of state and many of those are cash.
incredible.
It is quite an incredible number. We've also seen a strong trend. One of the strongest markets has been the Livingston market. Now, part of that is it's a great value proposition, but part of it is it has a very, very small town, community oriented aura to us, plus arts and culture and the incredible fishing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when we talked earlier, we discussed supply and demand and kind of how those are not exactly in sync at the moment. Can you discuss where development is in relation to the demand in the market right now in the Bozeman area?
So it's hard to quantify what the demand really is because we have such a shortage of inventory. We do not have enough basically shovel-ready lots to really take care of the demand. We've had thousands of rental units built in the last few years. Some beautiful luxury units have also been built, and we do not have vacancy factor yet in the community. So we still have a large amount of people moving in, and we still have not really solved that supply and demand issue. So we have an unbalanced market, which is still a seller-oriented market.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Well, Eric touched on cycles a little while ago. So I would like to ask you, when do you believe real estate sales will begin to slow down to a more normal rate once again?
It's the infamous crystal ball question. And the reality of it is, I will leave that to the last speaker to predict. But here's what I do know. And Eric really hit the nail on the head. There is so much commerce being driven by construction in Big Sky that we do have some sustainability factors that we didn't have in the last recession. We're seeing more and more cash buyers. We're seeing people that are not dependent on a job in Bozeman. They basically are still employed by Google or Amazon or whomever, and they're working from home. So we could potentially see these current market conditions, I think, continue through the end of the year and into next year. It will all truly be inventory driven. There's two other aspects in the market for those who are not paying cash. Interest rates are at an all-time low in at least our recent history in the last 20 years. You can actually get a mortgage under 3%. We're also seeing first-time home buyers come back into the national market at the highest level it's been in over a decade. So there are some factors, national factors, above and beyond just our local factors that are coming into play. But the thing we need to always remember is real estate is hyper-local. So we have to be very, very careful to look at the interaction between Bozeman and Big Sky. We have to be very careful to look at where that tipping point may occur. I'm always concerned when you start to see double-digit appreciation in median sales prices that, for example, when the Big Sky market had its correction, and its correction was larger than the Bozeman market or surrounding areas, we were seeing prices go up at 20 to 25% a year. You know that's not sustainable. We haven't seen those percentages yet, but that when you start to see prices increasing year over year at 10 to 15%, you have to question how long you can sustain that.
Yeah, well, with it's tough to predict when exactly we will reach that tipping point or the climax exactly. So I would like to ask you as well, what are the greatest pros and cons to a booming real estate market such as this?
Well, it's very interesting from the Bozeman perspective. We have been well prepared for growth. If you look at the growth in all the new elementary schools, the new high school, the infrastructure that's been put in at the hospital, both in Bozeman and in Big Sky, we are prepared for substantial growth. We may not be prepared for the growth rate we're on right now. So one of the pros of growth is obviously the economic impact of what it can have on a community from a tax base, from a trickle-down aspect, and just the commerce that is created by growth. The commerce that is created for anything from a Costco to a Target to a downtown business to a restaurant to an art gallery. The downside is obvious. I wouldn't say we have gridlock in Bozeman, but you can tell the MSU students are back, and we have bingo, state license plate competitions going on. We have a lot of travelers here right now. The downside, I think that's the most crucial for us to all understand, and Anya touched on this, is the challenges with social services and supporting social services. And let me just give you this one statistic, which I find absolutely amazing when you think about the generosity of our communities. So I just finished up co-chairing an $18 million campaign for Bozeman Health called Caring Forward. We finished that up and celebrated that on President's Day weekend. When COVID hit, we had unsolicited gifts of over $4 million flow into the healthcare system. It helped us fast track ICU. It helped us finish out hospital beds in Big Sky. And many of those private sector and foundation gifts were centered right in the Big Sky market. So it does speak to Eric's concept of we are starting to recognize how interconnected we are as one greater community.
Yeah, wow, that's an incredible amount of money. Lastly, I would just like to delve a little deeper and kind of discuss the residential versus commercial side of things, and what are you witnessing in terms of trends or corresponding moves in both aspects of the market?
Well, interestingly enough, our commercial market, for example, pre-COVID, we were fairly well leased up. There were buildings under construction. For example, North 7th or Midtown, there is a ton of new construction right there that is not finished and not fully leased. But we haven't seen dramatic fallout. We've seen a big box or two go away. Main Street has been relatively stable. That's something to watch very carefully in the coming months because retailers and food and beverage have been hit very, very hard. There is a great opportunity, and always when people move here, they bring that incredible entrepreneurial dream of starting a business or taking over an existing business. So we have to watch commercial, I think, very carefully. I think commercial, it could be fragile with smaller businesses in both Big Sky and in Bozeman.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, Robin. I just want to step back and ask you a personal question. Anya touched on the demanding hours right now in the real estate market. So how's your garden doing? Are you being able to get out and tend to that as frequently as you'd like right now?
I have the best COVID garden I have ever had. It's just me and the deer. We do get out every day, but that's my solace. And if I had any piece of advice for all of us who have been at this, when we first started, we are all AAA batteries, and we thought we were running a sprint, and we're not running a sprint. And we have to find life balance. We have to find balance with our families, with our colleagues, and with our clients. Anya's right. There have to be boundaries that are set so that we can stay well and we can stay on top of our game, but recognizing that it's okay not to go at this frantic pace that we've been at for the last 4 and 5 months.
Yeah, that's very good advice right there. Thank you, Robin. That's all I had, but I want to toss things over to Joe and see if we have any questions for the audience or any follow-up questions from him. Thank you again.
You bet.
Yeah, thank you, Robin. We really enjoyed your insight tonight. No questions at this stage, but really enjoyed your insight, and thank you for offering that Bozeman perspective and speaking from all your experience. Thanks so much for joining us.
You're very welcome.